The battlefield smelled of scorched metal and burning wood. Smoke curled in thick clouds, blotting out the twin suns, and ash floated lazily to the ground like gray snow. Across the ruined plains, the cries of wounded soldiers mixed with the harsh metallic clatter of alien weaponry. Commander Elias Ward crouched behind a shattered wall, scanning the chaos with steady, calm eyes. Humans had never faced anything like the Valreth Empire before. They were stronger, faster, and their technology was decades ahead. Yet here he was, alone, sent for reconnaissance to see if the Queen herself was leading the fight today. And she was. Queen Sarithala, resplendent in her dark cerulean armor, moved across the battlefield with terrifying precision. Her presence commanded the battlefield. Alien soldiers rallied around her, their loyalty absolute, their fear total. Every swing of her blade cut through enemies with a grace that was almost poetic, yet brutal in its effectiveness. The humans she encountered were like rag dolls, flung aside by her strength. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, searched constantly, measuring, judging, always a step ahead. Elias felt a chill. The Queen was legendary, not just for her skill, but for the laws she enforced. No human was allowed within 3 steps of her. Any human touching her, even accidentally, was subject to immediate execution. That law had held for centuries. And yet, there she was, leading a battle personally, without her guards shielding her completely. He watched as she fought, noting the small signs of fatigue in her movement. Even queens of her power were mortal after all. And then he saw it. A movement in the corner of her vision, one of her elite guards, a shadow among shadows. They lunged, a toxin blade aimed straight at her side. Time slowed in Elias's mind. She was fast, but not fast enough this time. The blade found its mark and the Queen stumbled, a hiss of pain escaping her lips. No one else noticed at first. Her soldiers hesitated, confused, but the traitor did not hesitate. They wanted her dead, wanted her throne for themselves. She staggered backward, blood seeping through the slit in her armor. Her hand shook slightly as she raised her blade to defend herself. Yet the toxin burned through her veins. She was powerful, but even she could not fight while her body betrayed her. Then she collapsed behind a ruined wall, barely conscious. Her mind struggled to stay alert as the traitors advanced. Her eyes, sharp and calculating moments ago, now flickered with fear and disbelief. She had ruled for decades, unchallenged, feared across galaxies, and yet here she was, alone, wounded, betrayed by those she trusted most. Elias saw her fall. Something in him stirred, not awe, not fear, but a sense of duty. He did not hesitate. Moving quickly and silently, he darted across the battlefield, ignoring gunfire and alien soldiers alike. The closer he got, the more he realized the impossibility of the situation. He was risking everything. Every instinct in him screamed to retreat. Every lesson he had learned in military school told him not to engage directly. And yet something primal, something human pushed him forward. He reached her side just as a second assailant raised their blade. Elias moved like lightning, striking with precision, his human weapon cutting through alien metal with luck and skill. The traitor fell back, stunned. Elias knelt beside the Queen, scanning her wounds. Her breathing was ragged, shallow, and uneven. Blood coated her armor, her fine tunic, and pooled on the ground beneath her. "You're bleeding," Elias said simply. His voice was calm, measured, but firm. Her eyes flicked open and she saw him. Shock, disbelief, and outrage crossed her face all at once. She tried to lift her hand, her voice weak but sharp. You are forbidden to touch me, human," she whispered. The words were heavy with centuries of law and tradition. The tone demanded obedience, demanded fear. It carried the weight of every soldier who had obeyed her unquestioningly. Elias ignored it. His hands were steady as he gently lifted her, careful not to worsen her injuries. "Then let me disobey for now," he replied. "You are hurt and you need help." The Queen's eyes widened. Not in fear, not in shock, but in disbelief. No human had ever dared touch her without instant death as consequence. And yet here he was, holding her steady, unharmed, and defiant. She tried to pull away, weak as she was, but the toxin had sapped her strength. Her limbs felt like lead. She could barely lift her weapon. She had faced armies and weapons she had never imagined. And yet she could not free herself from a single human's hands. Elias carried her through the ruins, ignoring the distant sounds of battle and chaos. His focus was absolute. Each step was deliberate, careful, and protective. He laid her down in an abandoned bunker, one of the few structures still standing amid the destruction. Dust and debris filled the air, and the faint light from the ruined walls cast shadows across her pale, injured face. She struggled to rise, attempting to assert her authority even in her weakened state. "I am the queen." You will not touch me," she hissed. But her voice betrayed her, breaking mid-sentence. Her body trembled, weak from the toxin coursing through her veins. Elias knelt beside her, examining the wounds. "You need rest," he said. "I'm going to help you." "That is all?" The queen's mind raced. She had been taught to expect nothing but fear and submission from humans, and yet this single human, offered neither. He offered help, respect, care. She had no words to describe the confusion that stirred within her. Part of her mind wanted to lash out, to demand he leave. Another part could not ignore the relief that coursed through her veins at his presence. Hours passed. Elias cleaned and treated her wounds with the limited medical supplies he carried. The toxin burned her from within, but he applied neutralizing agents, slowing its deadly progress. Her body ached, every movement a torment, yet she did not protest. Her mind, sharp and commanding as ever, tried to maintain control, but fatigue clouded her judgment. At one point, she watched him quietly, studying his hands, his eyes, his movements. He worked with precision, skill, and care. His calm presence seemed to radiate warmth, something she had not felt in decades. Her soldiers, her advisors, even her own family, none had ever treated her this way. All had obeyed, all had feared, all had followed rules. He had no obligation, no fear, no obedience. Yet he acted with honor, with courage, and with humanity. She wanted to test him to see if his courage would falter. "Why do you help me?" she asked softly, almost reluctantly. Elias looked at her, his eyes steady, unwavering. "Because you were dying." Nothing more, nothing less. The simplicity of his answer stunned her. She had expected cunning, manipulation, flattery, worship, or fear. But he had given her honesty, and it made her uneasy, a strange feeling twisting in her chest. She could not name it, could not understand it, could not allow it to exist. Night fell, the stars barely visible through the smoke and haze of the ruined battlefield. Outside, distant skirmishes continued, but the bunker remained a fragile pocket of safety. She tried to rise again feebly, testing her strength. The toxin had weakened her muscles, but her mind was restless. She needed control, she needed dominance, she needed authority. Elias caught her as she faltered. "Stop trying," he said firmly, his hand steady beneath hers. "Your strength is not enough right now. Let it rest," she hissed softly, frustrated, but found she could not resist. Her body refused to obey her command. Her pride, her centuries of power, battled with the stark reality of her weakness, and for the first time she realized how fragile even a queen could be. As the night wore on, they did not speak much, yet the silence was not uncomfortable. It was charged with unspoken understanding. He respected her boundaries even as he broke the law centuries in place by touching her. She did not command him away. She could not. Not fully. The hours passed slowly. Her wounds slowly stabilized, and the toxin's effects began to ebb under his careful treatment. She remained cautious, wary, but something inside her had shifted. Something ancient, ingrained in her since birth, had been challenged. The queen, feared across galaxies, the ruler of the Valreth Empire, had discovered something she never expected. A human could act with honor, courage, and compassion without expectation, fear, or reward. Morning approached. Sunlight filtered weakly through the broken walls of the bunker. The distant sounds of the battlefield faded, replaced by the low hum of the city's ruins. She looked at him, studying the lines of his face, the steadiness in his eyes. He had saved her life. He had risked everything, and he had done it without asking for anything in return. She tried to speak, to assert herself, to reclaim her authority. This is forbidden," she whispered, voice barely audible. Elias smiled faintly. "Then let the law wait," he replied softly. "Right now your life is more important." Her mind reeled. No one had ever spoken to her this way. No one had ever challenged the laws of the Valreth Empire and survived, let alone thrived. And yet here he was, calm, unshaken, unwavering. She could feel the first threads of something new weaving in her mind. Curiosity, respect, unease. And maybe, though she would not admit it, a spark of trust. And though she would never say it aloud yet, she wondered, if this human, This lone soldier from an enemy world could survive her wrath, her laws, her empire. Perhaps he could survive her heart as well. The morning light crept through the broken walls of the ruined bunker, casting weak golden rays over the dusty floor. Outside, the distant sounds of the battlefield had faded, leaving a tense quiet that was almost deafening. Queen Sarathala sat against the wall, her armor scratched, her body weak, yet her mind sharp and restless. She could not deny the strange pull she felt toward the human who had saved her life, nor the unease of being unable to control him. Commander Elias Ward lay on a cot nearby, bandages wrapped around a wound in his shoulder. He stirred slightly as the sunlight touched his face, and she caught herself studying the rise and fall of his chest. Despite her laws, her instincts, her pride, she could not look away. His presence, his calmness, his unwavering courage, it unsettled her, but in a way that made her think clearly for the first time in years. Hours passed as Elias assessed their situation. Supplies were limited, but he had managed to stabilize her condition. The toxin that had coursed through her veins was weakening, and her strength slowly returned. She tested her legs, then her arms, each movement deliberate. Elias watched silently, offering support only when absolutely necessary, never imposing, never patronizing. She had expected fear, or reverence, or at least obedience, but he offered none of these. She finally spoke, her voice still soft, almost tentative. "You risked your life for me. Humans do not do this without purpose. Tell me, why?" Elias looked at her steadily, his expression calm, because it was the right thing to do. Not for glory, not for reward. "You were dying." "I did what anyone would do for someone in need," she frowned, confusion knitting her brow. She had expected cunning, deception, ambition, never honesty. The simplicity of his answer, the unshakable integrity behind it, forced her to reconsider every assumption she had ever made about humans. Her entire life had been shaped by distrust of other species, by fear and superiority, by law and tradition, and yet, here was proof that one human could act purely, selflessly, courageously. A distant sound caught their attention, shouts, metallic clanging, the unmistakable cadence of alien boots. The traitorous guards were back, intent on finishing what they had begun. Sarathala rose slowly, her armor clinking with each movement, and Elias followed her carefully. "You will fight with me?" she asked, her voice steady but cautious. "I will," he replied simply, standing at her side. She studied him for a moment, the old rules of her empire clashing with the new reality she faced. No human had ever been allowed near her, let alone fight beside her as an equal, and yet the thought of being alone against the traitors filled her with dread. She could not deny the comfort of his presence, nor the strange assurance that together they might survive. The traitors approached, their weapons raised, faces twisted in greed and hatred. Sarathala drew her blade, its edge glinting in the morning light, and Elias took up his weapon, ready to defend her. The first strike came fast, a blur of metal aimed at her. Elias moved before she could, intercepting the blow with his own weapon. Pain flared in his shoulder, but he held firm. Sarathala's eyes widened, not in fear, but in a rare moment of admiration. She had faced countless warriors in her lifetime, yet this human, a member of a species she had considered weak and reckless, had acted with precision and bravery. Together they fought side by side, their movements almost instinctive, complementing each other in ways neither had anticipated. The battle was brutal, each second stretching into an eternity. The traitors were skilled, but their arrogance blinded them. They underestimated the queen's resilience and the human's ingenuity. Elias blocked and struck, his body moving with trained precision, while Sarathala's strength and agility cut through her enemies like a storm. At one critical moment, a traitor lunged at her from the side, a hidden blade aimed for her heart. Elias threw himself in front of her, taking the strike meant for her. Pain erupted through his body and he fell to the ground, gasping. Sarathala froze, shock and fury igniting in her veins. The law that had always governed her interactions with humans screamed in her mind. Humans were forbidden, humans were unworthy, humans were dangerous. And yet here was one who had risked his life to save hers again. Rage and gratitude warred inside her, fueling her strength. She moved with lightning speed, her blade a whirlwind of deadly precision. The remaining attackers fell before her, some too slow, some too confident, none able to match her skill. When the last one fell, silence settled over the battlefield once more. Dust and smoke hung in the air, mingling with the faint scent of blood and ozone. Kneeling beside Elias, she studied his battered form. He was conscious, though barely. Her hands, still trembling from the adrenaline of battle, reached for him. You could have died," she whispered, voice thick with emotion she did not yet understand. Elias managed a weak smile. "I am still here," he said, his voice strained but steady. "Because you are still here." For the first time, Sarith Allah allowed herself to feel vulnerability, not weakness, but something deeper. Gratitude, trust, perhaps even a flicker of connection that defied centuries of law and tradition. She lifted him carefully, her hands steady despite their trembling. The old rules, the ones that forbade human contact, felt irrelevant now. They could not govern this moment, this choice, this bond. Back in the safety of the bunker, she tended to his wounds, reversing roles for the first time. Her hands were precise, careful, gentle in ways she had never allowed herself to be. He did not protest, did not fear, did not recoil. He trusted her, and that trust strengthened her, reminded her of the power not just in strength but in choice. As days passed, the two of them recovered. Conversations began, tentative at first. Sarith asked about his world, his people, his customs. Elias asked about her empire, her history, the weight of her crown. Each question, each answer built understanding and respect. They discovered similarities despite the vast differences in their species. Honor, courage, loyalty, compassion. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the ruined city, Sarith stood at the edge of the bunker's broken wall watching the stars. Elias joined her silently, standing close but not touching. The wind carried the faint scent of smoke and earth, of destruction and survival. "I have always ruled by law," she said softly, more to herself than to him. "Centuries of law, yet I have never encountered one like you. You do not fear me, yet you respect me. You act with honor, not obligation. You challenge everything I believed about humans." Elias nodded, his expression calm. "Perhaps you needed someone to show you what is possible when fear is removed from the equation." She studied him, the weight of centuries in her eyes. For the first time, she realized that strength was not just in armies, weapons, or fear. Strength could be found in courage, in compassion, in the choice to act rightly even when the laws of the universe said otherwise. The bond between them grew, quiet and unspoken, built on trust and shared experience. Each day she allowed herself to rely on him, even as she maintained the dignity and authority of a queen. He did not diminish her. He complemented her. Together they were stronger than alone, stronger than any army, stronger than law itself. And then the final challenge arrived. News came that the surviving traitors had regrouped, threatening to overthrow her entirely if she did not return to the capital. The queen, still weakened but resolute, prepared for the journey. Elias offered to accompany her, and she accepted without hesitation. As they traveled, facing ambushes and navigating treacherous terrain, the unspoken trust between them solidified into an unbreakable bond. They relied on each other's strengths, covered each other's weaknesses, and survived encounters that would have killed lesser beings. At last, they reached the capital, where the remaining loyal forces awaited. Sarith addressed them, her voice carrying authority, power, and something new: respect for the human at her side. "This human has saved my life," she declared. "He has fought beside me, protected me, and shown a courage beyond measure. He is under my protection. Anyone who harms him will answer to me directly." The soldiers gasped. No queen had ever granted such honor to a human. The law forbidding human contact, forbidding trust, forbidding equality had been broken, by choice, not by accident. Elias bowed his head respectfully, acknowledging the honor without arrogance. Sarith watched him, her mind a whirlwind of thought and emotion. The law had been defied, tradition challenged, history rewritten. And yet she felt a strange sense of peace, of clarity, of rightness she had never known. In the quiet moments that followed, she knelt beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm, a gesture that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. "You are forbidden, and yet I cannot turn away," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Elias looked at her, understanding without words. "Then we face the future together," he said softly. For the first time in history, an alien queen chose a human not as subject, not as servant, not as enemy, but as equal. And in that choice, centuries of law, fear, and tradition began to crumble. In its place, something new emerged: trust, courage, and the possibility of connection that transcended species, battlefields, and law. The stars shone above the ruined city, silent witnesses to a bond forged in blood, courage, and choice. The Queen, once betrayed and bleeding, had found an ally in a human soldier, and together they would face the challenges of a G,